I will just go back to the fact that, the people that are cheering this on privately are not like right-wing Republicans, are not MAGA people. A lot of our friends are in the media, and also Democrats that worked on Joe Biden's campaign, that worked on other campaigns, that are saying, yeah, I'd like to feel safe walking around this city. If the federal government can be a positive partner in keeping the streets safe, while, again, forming a partnership with the D.C. police and not taking over, then at least the people I've spoken with that live in D.C. day in, day out, see this as a positive step.
I think it's also reasonable to be concerned.
Well, as I called it in the last video, I truly do believe that Democrats are making a major political mistake right now. They are choosing the wrong hill to die on by becoming hysterical and Trump deranged over this DC federalization situation. And the reason I say that is because they're already repeating a mistake that we've seen them do in the past, which is to essentially box themselves into this political position of defending crime, right? Either having to argue on one hand that crime is a good thing, and instead of prosecuting criminals, we should give them restorative justice and they can go on to be doctors, engineers, and CEOs, or on the other hand, choosing to gaslight people massively, right? Basically trying to argue, hey, average American, totally disregard what you and everyone else around you is seeing, living, and witnessing firsthand with their own eyes. Actually, crime is not happening, right? Crime is down. Look at the statistics that we ourselves admitted to manipulating. Don't worry, everything is safe. We're definitely not letting the criminals run around on our streets. And guys, it's worth noting that either one of those political positions is not a winning one, because guess why? Crime is not a popular policy position with anyone. And that's not a mere opinion of mine. This is something we saw a case study on in the 2024 election, where even in deep blue Democrat areas like Los Angeles and Oakland, California, we saw mayors and DAs be elected out, voted out by their own anti-Trump Democrat electorate, because guess why? Even they were tired of the crime. I'm going to say it again. Remember this line: crime is not a popular position with anyone. Yet despite all of that, despite all of the evidence, they should be able to see that, hey, maybe this is not the issue to fight Trump too hard on. Nope, indeed, National Democrat leadership and Chuck Schumer are choosing to take the bait. They apparently think that going back to 2020 style BLM arguments is somehow going to win them the 2026 midterms when their approval rating is already massively tanking here. So we'll tell you all about it. We'll document the Democrat response to all of this in today's video, and I want everyone to take notes on that. But secondly, I want to point out here that this is not just a matter of my own subjective opinion, because even figures in the liberal media, namely Joe Scarborough, MSNBC, even an ABC host, a couple of other people, are also backing me up on this position, basically saying that, first of all, hey, Democrats, listen, they're basically playing the game of, you guys are going to lose. Because first of all, we live in DC, many of us, we can all attest to this. Crime is not down. That's a made up lie. It's not true. Everyone knows that it's dangerous. But secondly here, guys, it's not a winning position because people don't like crime. So that said, we'll tell you all about this chronicle here today, because it's pretty interesting to see. You have a couple of people like Joe Scarborough trying to warn the Democrat Party off the cliff, off the sinking ship. But, Trump derangement syndrome does a funny thing to some people, and they truly cannot help themselves. So that said, let's get into today's video. First though, folks, do us a favor as usual. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing is not only the best way to support our videos, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, let us of course start here by showing you what national Democrat leadership are saying about this. So keep in mind, we're not citing some fringe politician here. We're not citing some media figure. Here is Democrat Senate minority leader, not majority, minority leader Chuck Schumer himself basically asking the question, hey, if Trump goes to Congress and asks for an extension of the federalization of DC police, would you grant it? His response here is no effing way. Because Democrats have this recent trend where they think that if they cuss more, that'll make them seem more relatable to people. Oh, hey, we're like vulgar, crass, but still very inauthentic because it's literally a performance. That'll change everything. Nonetheless, take a listen to the Democrats failing to learn the lessons of 2020, 2024, and way beyond.
Have you heard, do you think that he's going to end up going to Congress? Because he can't revoke complete home rule authority for D.C. without actually going to Congress first. He can't even extend this past 30 days without going to you all first. Have you heard that that's what he plans on doing? And if he went to Congress and said, you know what, there's this crime emergency, we need the National Guard out there longer, we need to take over Washington, D.C., would you grant it?
No fucking way. We'll fight him tooth and nail. And right now, as you said, he can only do it for 30 days, or now I guess it's 26 or 27, whatever. And he needs to get Congress to approve it. And not only are we not going to approve it, but I have there are some Republicans who don't like it either. This is, again, just a distraction. He's afraid of Epstein. He's afraid of all that. And we are not going to be we are not going to give up on Epstein.
Yeah, this is what political desperation looks like. Okay, Chuck Schumer's trying to figure out what the consultants want him to say, or which issue will stick. But that truly is an astonishing take. Crime in America, caring about crime, wanting to do something to stop it, not only will Democrats not go along with that, which duly noted there, thank you for sharing, but beyond that, it's actually a distraction from Epstein. Okay, everything's a distraction from everything that happens in the world is a distraction from Epstein. So when that congressional staffer, this is apparently according to the Democrats, this is literally their opinion, when that congressional staffer got shot to death just a month ago, that was just a stage plot. Okay, it was a stage plot to distract from Epstein. When Big Balls got assaulted, just a distraction from Epstein, guys. When average citizens in DC and other cities get mugged, get carjacked, all that stuff, none of it's happening. All it is a distraction from Epstein, guys. Truly an astonishing opinion. Hey, Chuck Schumer, do you think that's going to work? Do you think that's seriously going to make a national issue that you're going to carry into 2020 and everything that happens, right? There could be a war breaking out. It's just a distraction from Epstein, guys. Are you serious? So that's the opinion, right? Anytime anyone mentions crime, you want to do something about crime, that's just hiding the Epstein files coming from the Democrat Party who never released anything on the Epstein files. Okay, Chuck Schumer, thank you very much for that opinion. But I think you basically get the idea now that, as Scott Jennings here notes to a CNN panel, yes, Democrats are indeed acting like idiots, okay, because they want to oppose Donald Trump. They want to be Trump deranged. But again, you cannot pick crime as the issue to oppose the right wing on in 2025, because guess what? That's like your biggest losing issue besides, actually, I think in general, it might be your biggest losing issue in general, besides maybe a men and women sports or something. So take a listen.
Well, what about that idea? What about the idea that this is, even if one supports this effort, it's a Band-Aid, right? It's not like hiring 500 additional cops in D.C.
And I think they do have a staffing shortage in the D.C. Police Department. They need to fix that. I don't know what's authoritarian about putting some extra eyes and ears on the street, getting criminals off the street to keep people from being murdered and carjacked. Nobody in their right mind believes Washington, D.C. is safe. And to say the president's trying to help us keep people from getting murdered and carjacked and we have to stop this authoritarian push, it's just sort of ridiculous rhetoric. These Democrats don't know what to do with themselves. Every time Donald Trump tries to do something, they reflexively feel the need to oppose it without thinking through the political implications for themselves.
You think Democrats are taking the bait?
Well, I think they're acting like idiots here. The city is crime-ridden. I saw a guy get murdered in Union Station in February at 4 p.m. I saw the body hit the floor at the bottom of the escalator on the second floor. And so everybody who visits there, everybody who lives there knows it's a serious problem. You have extra eyes and ears. They've arrested criminals. They're getting illegal guns off the street. People feel safer. Tourists feel safer. What is the problem?
All right.
Yeah, exactly. What is the problem? Well, we'll address apparently what their grievance is with all of this in a second. But of course, a couple of those notable talking points are that, first of all, well, it's because it's racist, because you're going after a city where there's a lot of black people. So apparently you can't crack down on crime because if it correlates to a certain demographic situation. Like, let's just have no police or anything apparently in black neighborhoods, right? Because if you put them there, apparently that's racist. Okay. The reality is that police go where there are high crime rates, and it really is that simple. But nonetheless, that's number one. Secondly, of course, the bigger talking point I think you're hearing in more mainstream circles is this is an authoritarian takeover, because having federal officers and National Guard in Washington, D.C., that never happens. Okay, that's never happened before. But okay, basically you get what they're saying about that. Which, before we get into the rest of this video, I'd first of all just like to point out, if you may remember, that New York Democrat Governor Kathy Hochul did this exact thing in 2024. I know that's like forgotten to us now. Don't remember this, guys? She sent the National Guards to basically guard the subways and protect people, because guess why? There were too many incidents of like attacks and violent crime and all this stuff on the New York City subway. So they basically sent them there to lock it down, maybe do some intimidation and get the situation under control. So I'd like to ask the question to the Democrats here. Was this racist? Was this a fascist takeover? And most of all, why would Kathy Hochul do this? Because I thought everything is safe. There's no crime. New York City subways are safe. DC is safe. Chicago, all these places are safe. So what could possibly justify this if crime was allegedly at a 30-year low, like people keep on trying to tell us? Just a casual reminder, and then we'll move on from this.
My job is to keep people safe. I have to, any way I can, I'm going to keep New Yorkers safe. And I'll tell you who does show appreciation for the people out there on the streets. I've been walking the streets. I walk into business. People are just saying, thank you for taking such strong action. I needed to do something dramatic and quickly to send a message that you will not get away with committing crimes in our subways.
It's your job to keep people safe. Keep people safe from what? I thought there's no crime. I thought it's at 30-year lows. What are you deploying the National Guard for, Kathy Hochul? Are you some kind of authoritarian? Are you racist? Is that why you want these armed National Guard on the subway? How dare you? This is terrifying people of black and brown communities, right? Anyways, you basically get the picture here, right? Obviously, what's happening in 2025 is that despite the fact that Democrats did this just last year, Trump derangement syndrome is an all-consuming force, right? It will get people to defend anything. Whether that's the Maine governor now defending men and women's sports despite knowing that it's an 80-20 issue. Now you have Democrats defending crime. That is the situation. But here is the thing. This issue of the fact that actually crime is a massive problem in DC, and no, it's not at 30-year lows, and no, that's completely bogus. And yes, indeed, the DC police chief or commander, I should say the police commander there, is under investigation for manipulating the crime statistics because everyone knows they were, okay? Even some folks at MSNBC, Joe Scarborough here mainly, are noting that, no, we're not going along with this. Actually, Trump kind of has a point here, and it's not exactly smart for Democrats to pick this position because, as he notes, being someone who I believe lives in Washington, D.C., or probably visits there at least very frequently, that indeed, no, crime in D.C. is a massive problem, and Democrats are not doing themselves any favors by pretending like something that everyone who lives in D.C., and by the way, other cities around this country knows, is fake, when it's obviously not fake. So take a listen here as you start to see the signs of dissent that this position Democrats are currently trying to take is so unpopular. Even some people are trying to get them off of that sinking ship, although they clearly refuse to do so because, again, the TDS here is pretty strong. Here's Joe Scarborough.
You can walk 40, 50, 60 blocks in Manhattan at 2 a.m. and feel safe. And yet in Washington, D.C., I've got friends that worked in the Biden White House. I have friends that work in the media that say they don't feel safe walking 3 blocks in Washington, D.C. Why can't Washington be fixed, despite what the crime numbers say? Because people aren't feeling it.
You know, often it's the perception of being safe or unsafe that affects cities. And I think that's what's happened in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has 3,400 police officers. They're undermanned. The National Guard will provide a presence. And sometimes that's all you need to clear a block or clear a person's mind that it's okay to walk that block. Police presence, or the symbols of police presence. So we'll see how it goes.
I want to read you a text from someone who, I won't say their name, but they're, we'll just say that they're very liberal. And he says, this may sound controversial, but I'm not totally opposed to Trump's National Guard move in D.C. I know he's doing it for politics, but crime remains rampant. I've had too many friends carjacked, shot at. None of us will walk more than 3 blocks after 8 p.m. 13-year-olds are committing many of these crimes. Quite a change from a decade ago when things were much calmer. Well, that actually sounds like the D.C. that I lived in when I lived a block behind the Supreme Court. And, you know, every 3 days, one of my neighbors was getting held up at gunpoint. I mean, there has been a crime problem in D.C. At the same time, obviously, a lot of concerns. Will this look like June of 2020?
You know, that's why it's so funny that Chuck Schumer tries to argue that, privately, I'm sure there's many Republicans who are not on board with this. No, you ought to look at your own house. Actually, privately, there's many Democrats who are fully on board with this. Listen to Joe Scarborough's friend. There's a lot of people like that or represent that, by the way. They won't say so publicly because, you know, they're in their little cult or whatever. But the truth is that, yes, crime is indeed a massive problem in Washington, D.C., and Democrats are not doing themselves any favors by trying to deny the existence of it. Take a listen here as Chris Matthews and Mika, Joe's wife here, furthermore, are pointing out, and again, trying to sound the 5-alarm fire here, that Democrats are making a political mistake because, first of all, admitting here that their crime statistics, right, they keep arguing that violent crime is down, is not even accurate, first of all. And secondly, they're completely losing the American people for this very reason. Take a listen. And this is what I've been saying, but it's completely true. So check it out.
And the murder rate, you can't keep saying violent crime is down, but the murder rate's up. To the average person, the murder rate's about life and death. You don't brag about a rising murder rate. And the Democrats are, I agree with you, Mika, they're falling into the trap of defending what's indefensible.
It's a trap. Yes, it's a trap. I mean, if it's not a winner politically to say, oh, you're wrong, look at the data. Because, if one violent crime happens in a very heavily populated part of the city, people hear about it and it's visceral. They don't want it. And they'll gravitate to the person who appears to be doing something about it.
Well, gee, you don't say. As we pointed out in the last video, notice how every single time the talking point is that violent crime is down, never that murder is down, because indeed murder is up in DC. And yeah, Chris Matthews is right. That's probably the most important type of violent crime there is out there to be worried about, truthfully. Okay, first of all. Secondly, as we also pointed out, the reason that violent crime, quote unquote, is down is because the DC police commander, allegedly, it's under investigation, but got caught and got the complaint filed by the actual Metro Police Union. This is not a Trump issue. This is a local issue that he got busted in for trying to downgrade violent crimes to lesser offenses in order to manipulate the crime statistics. And then now you have Democrats and the national media, who are supposed to be journalists, refusing to actually look into the fact that, hey, they're just blatantly lying about the crime statistics. That's why, because it doesn't really make sense, right? How could all sorts of violent crimes be down, but murder goes up? That's a disconnected. So, well, yeah, because violent crime, you would think, should correlate with the murder rate. No, there's only one simple answer, because things like carjackings and assaults and other things are not being counted, guess what, as violent crimes, number one. And then secondly, of course, as Mika points out, in one rare case, she is indeed correct here. It goes without saying, that's not a winning issue for the Democratic Party. And many people, of course, are the nationwide victims of crimes. Here, by the way, is an ABC host, furthermore, backing up what we are all collectively saying here, that no, DC crime is a serious problem. It's not exactly made up. Okay, check it out.
We've been talking so much about the numbers, and yeah, usually that's how you play devil's advocate, is you talk about, oh, well, stats say crime is down. However, I can tell you firsthand here in downtown D.C. where we work, right here around our bureau, just in the past 6 months, there were 2 people shot. One person died, literally 2 blocks down here from the bureau. It was within the last 2 years that I actually was jumped walking just 2 blocks down from here. And then just this morning, one of my coworkers said her car was stolen a block away from the bureau. So we can talk about the numbers going down, but crime is happening every single day because we're all experiencing it firsthand while working and living down here.
Yes, correct. Everyone who lives or works in DC for a long enough time period all has stories like this. It goes on and on. You know, you can say it's anecdotal, but anecdotal when everyone working in the media all has the same story and everyone working on Capitol Hill has the same story, and you have the story of Big Balls, you have the story of the congressional intern. Yeah, maybe ding, 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 geniuses. Have you perhaps reached the conclusion that crime is not down? And while I give credit to these journalists who are, for once, kind of pointing out, you know, even if it's a selfish thing, even if it's just because they experienced it, so now they actually care for whatever reason, right? For pointing it out. At the same time, I have to say, why has not a single one of these people maybe put two and two together and realized they're lying about the crime statistics? They're manipulating the crime statistics. Again, that's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. This is a news story from back in July. The police commander is under investigation for it. That's why there's a disconnect. Okay? Why does not a single person... They keep saying, well, the statistics might say one thing. Have you considered that the statistics are lying? Oh, wait, you won't, because you still work in the media and you still want to run cover for the expert class so that people don't ask too many questions. But in this case, because you're the one who has experienced this stuff, you can't deny the reality, right? But nonetheless, okay, it is what it is. I'm glad at least to see that someone is, pointing out indeed that crime is not down. Okay, that said, now let's hear the counter argument, because as you probably imagine, the folks over at MSNBC, many of them are not happy with what Joe Scarborough is saying. So here we have on Symone Sanders, who is about to provide a defense to Joe Scarborough's face as to why actually DC is not unsafe. And the solution to making the streets safer is not to add more police, law enforcement, and similar agencies out on the streets for the reason she's about to give. So here is, again, the big-brained Democrat take that apparently, according to them, they want to take nationwide as their political message going into 2026. So let's take a listen and evaluate what the counter-argument possibly could be to, crime being a problem. Okay, check it out.
You don't think more police make streets safer?
No, Joe, I'm a black woman in America. I do not always think that more police make streets safer. When you walk down the streets of Georgetown, you don't see a police officer on every corner, but you don't feel unsafe. So what is it about talking about places like Southeast DC, right? Ward 8, if you will, that people say, well, we need more officers to make us safe. I think we have to rethink what safety means in America.
They're doing this? Really, they're doing this? These people never learn lessons from anything? Okay, then as a black woman in America, let's break that down first of all. Number one, the reason why there is more concern in a place like Southeast DC than Georgetown, despite the fact that I think the established fact now is that everywhere in DC is becoming unsafe, because if the whole district is under the same soft on crime policies, that's why you're seeing shootings in DuPont Circle and actually on Capitol Hill and all that stuff recently. But nonetheless, to address your talking point, Symone, I know what you're trying to say, but have you perhaps considered the fact that that's because there is more crime in Southeast DC than Georgetown, right? That there's a higher crime rate, a higher murder rate, and that would explain why perhaps police should be on the streets more in places where we know there is more crime? You know, have you considered that's and of course they always try to say, oh, that's because the crime doesn't get reported. No, I don't think there's people burglarizing Georgetown mansions that often. It's just simply not happening. You don't think those snobby rich liberals would totally melt down if someone broke into their house? Of course they would. There is literally just less crime happening, number one. Number two, okay, apparently this is the Democrat strategy, the national message, so take notes of it, guys. We need to rethink public safety in America. We need to rethink what it means for the streets to be safer. What a statement, okay? So, this idea you have apparently of safe streets being, a place where you can walk, where you can take your children, where you can walk around without the fear of getting mugged or robbed or stabbed or shot, where you can drive your car down the street without it getting carjacked. You think that's what safety means, but have you considered removing your previous biases and prejudices and inherent bias and all that? Have you considered that perhaps a neighborhood, a street where there's cracked out crazy homeless people and people trying to rob you and shoot you, have you considered perhaps that might be more safe actually? We need to reevaluate, right? We need to tear down all of these white Western imperialist norms of things like safety means not getting attacked or robbed or killed. Maybe that's I know I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but that is indeed basically what she is saying, and we can break that down. And we know that to be the case. You know why? Because after 2020, this is exactly what they tried in Democrat cities. This is exactly what they did. What did they do? They defunded the police. They took them out. They abolished plainclothes police, all this different stuff, right? And of course, secondly, that went along with so-called criminal justice reform, where they basically started going soft on the criminals, right? No cash bail, all of this stuff. And we were told, actually, this so-called community approach to policing will make everything safer. You know, let's stop arresting people for small petty crimes like shoplifting. And then what happened across this country? We know exactly what happened. What happened in DC? When they started saying that, well, you know, they're just teenagers. They shouldn't really face, they should just face restorative justice and, like, you know, therapy or something like that. Yeah, where'd that go? By the way, the idea of sending social workers to deal with police calls, how's that been going in the cities that have tried it? They're all utter disasters, okay? Because again, this idea of let's rethink and redefine safety to mean you're not even safe. Yeah, guess what? It's a total freaking disaster. And yet this is exactly what they want to do. They want to reinstate this policy, bring it nationwide. I think that video should play everywhere. We need to rethink what it means to be safe in America. Yeah, okay. Well, Symone Sanders, I fully encourage you, you know, maybe practice what you preach, you know. I wonder if she takes an Uber to work in DC, or she actually takes the metro like a normal person and walks around, you know, late at night. I'm going to guess no. I'm going to guess the answer is no there. But nonetheless, there you have it. So that's Joe Scarborough trying to say, isn't it common sense? Hey, police on the street making more safe? No, actually, the safest place in the world is places with no police and no laws. Okay. Well, with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.